Hey everyone, I'm Mike Lowe and we are in Madden 23 late season start this time, and we are going to be going over my approach to the offseason. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. We're always doing franchise stuff like this, and we're going to be talking about a lot of different issues here using the Broncos as our example. So we're going to be going through the offseason here. If you were to start a franchise at the end of the actual NFL season, we're going to talk about fifth-year options. We're going to talk about free agency and how it ties into the actual draft. Even what do we do with Russell Wilson, who has just an astronomical contract. So let's get into it. Madden 23. So the very first phase in the offseason really is the re-sign players phase. And, during the season, I actually really like to use this team salaries page, but it gets a little weird. Like there's still a bug in Madden that, for whatever reason, it doesn't quite show the years right. Like it seems to be off. Like for instance, if we look here at left guard, it indicates that Risner has a contract for 2023 and he doesn't. He's actually a free agent. So it's almost like this should still say 22 and this should say 23 and so on. It just kind of seems like it hasn't really triggered or it's maybe triggered too early that the next season is upon us. And so it's just not matching up. And same thing here. By that rule, you think Jerry Jeudy would be a free agent, but he's not. He is accurately being shown. So I guess what it's doing is it shows players accurately unless they're a free agent, and then it's for some reason doesn't show this as 0. It still shows them as having some sort of contract, which is their most recent one. And so it gets a little bit confusing. So as much as I do like to use that salary page when I kind of go through and start to kind of map out my roster and whatnot, it really is safer to go through here. And then what I just like to do is hit L2 on PlayStation here. And you can just kind of go position by position. And so let's talk about re-signing players, right? I mean, obviously the idea is it's a chance for you to exclusively negotiate with your current players before they hit free agency. And so there's some advantages to that, right? Of course. I mean, you're able to retain talent on your team and you don't have to kind of fight for them in the open market. The key word in that phrase is key talent, right? Brett Rippon and others here are not key talent. And so the only thing you're guaranteeing is if you go through and negotiate where if you start to like hoard bad players, and let's not even use him as an example because he's so bad, no one's probably hoarding him. Like Marlon Mack, right? Like an average kind of second, maybe third string running back. If you start hoarding players like this who are incredibly replaceable, especially at the running back position, a 27-year-old running back who's a 72, you are just locking yourself into financial commitment with him. Just because it's the re-sign players phase does not mean this is the only time you can re-sign your players. But again, if you sign them now, you're locking yourself in. And that signing bonus there, if you had to cut them later on, you're just wasting about $2 million here. And so unless there's really a reason to bring someone back, I really encourage you to be patient here. There's really not anything here. I mean, here we have like Tyler Beatty, not bad, 23-year-old, 68 overall. This would save you a draft pick. So, I mean, it does kind of make sense because like if you just lose him and then you say you need to replace a second or third string running back. So, there are some reasons here that you might want to go and grab a player like this, but I would encourage you on these borderline players to just don't look at the overall, but really go in and look and see, is this player matching what you want? Really nice acceleration, decent speed, but not much agility. So again, just kind of runs in a straight line, but isn't going to fumble the ball. So that's good, but doesn't really have any sort of like juke move or spin move or trucking or stiff arm or anything like that. I mean, literally just runs in a straight line. Not a whole lot there. He'll stay pretty healthy. So again, not a bad player. And I guess the benefit of signing someone to use Tyler Beatty as an example is it would save you a draft pick because you do need depth at running back, especially in a league that has like a higher injury rating and that sort of thing. And so it's up to you. Is $1.7 million a lot for a probably like a third or fourth string running back? Yeah, it is. And that's the key there. And again, if you cut him, you're wasting about $500,000 in his signing bonus. So he would be a player, maybe it's really just up to you, maybe kind of what you are looking at the running back position with. Obviously, what you currently already have on the roster at running back is good to know. One of the things I like to do is I like to kind of use like a stable of running backs in Madden. And the reason I do that is because injuries are pretty high at the running back position, both in real life and in Madden. And so I like Javonte Williams, an 82 power back, even though we use an elusive back here in this system that I've just left on default. it's still nice to have a stable of unique running backs. What I don't want are 4 running backs that are exactly the same. Maybe 2, because if my primary starter gets hurt, it's nice to have a backup for him. But if Javonte Williams is my power back, which he will be, I then want to get an elusive back, and I also want to get a receiving back. Now, if that can sometimes be 2 in the same, that's fine. But I don't want my power back and elusive back using the same role, because they're going to get too many carries. It's going to lead to too much fatigue, and it's going to lead to injuries. And so in this instance, Javonte Williams is going to have the power back position. And then what I'm going to probably end up looking for, and he can split some time at the elusive back roles too, like outside runs and things like that, running out of the shotgun. But I want to find a receiving back who is also an elusive back. That's something I'll be looking for in free agency. And then again, you have 2 really, really nice running backs. Or worst case, I'll get a cheap elusive back and a cheap receiving back, and I'll use all 3. So the point being, that brings us back here to Tyler Beatty. What does that mean for him? Does he fit any of those roles? Not really. I mean, the only role he would kind of serve is like backing up our primary back. But for me, my primary backs actually are power back in this offense. Even though it's not an exact scheme fit, he's just our best back. And so unless something changes, I don't see a reason to bring back Tyler Beatty. Not to mention he's just kind of a straight line runner. It's not like he has blazing speed or anything. So it just doesn't move the needle for me. It doesn't mean I won't bring him back. It just means I'm not going to bring him back right now. So speaking of bringing players back, there's a reason I chose the Broncos for this tutorial video. And we are looking at a team that's got a really, really difficult challenge here with Russell Wilson, who's on a really, really bad contract. I guess next year he's at 22, which is, I mean, again, still serviceable, but really not for a 74 overall, especially when he'll be 35. It gets to be an even bigger problem later, right? 35, 55, 58, and it comes down a little bit to 53. This is a terrible contract. It's a terrible trade so far for Denver. Just absolutely brutal. We don't have our top 5 pick anymore because it was part of that deal. We have a late first-round draft pick. It's a disastrous trade. What you don't want to do, though, is make a bad situation worse. And so it's very important to know this screen and kind of what's going on here with team salaries. Now, at the top left, you can see 2023 cap space, or total cap, right? $243 million. That's what the league has per team that you can use to fill out your roster. Rollover from 22, that means basically penalties that your team has absorbed from last year that you're still paying on this year. So in other words, $35 million of that $243 million is gone towards nothing. It's literally paying for mistakes that had been previously made by this team. And so we're already eating that, and that will come into play here in a second when we talk about Russell Wilson, and a lot of you who probably want to try and cut Russell Wilson, we'll talk about what that might mean. Your adjusted cap, we can skip that for now. Cap space 65.1. We have a lot of cap space, so that's actually good. Even with these bad contracts, it gives us a little bit of freedom there, a little bit of wiggle room. And you can see that we have in 2023, we've used $213 million of that 240. So you're thinking, well, how is the cap space 65? What's going on? That's really kind of cap space moving forward. We will lose that rollover of 35, and then we still have our other 30, and that gives us that 65 million, right? So we have a lot more money next year to work with, which is good. We don't want to mess that up by cutting Russell Wilson, because if you cut Russell Wilson, you have a penalty of $82 million. So where that $35 million is at for rollover penalty in 22, that would be rollover from 23, $82 million. So that's a bigger problem for sure. It's twice as much as it was. That's going to cut into, obviously your cap space a tremendous amount and leave you with hardly any money for the offseason. And so you're thinking like, well, that's crazy, like, but he's making $22 million. But $22 million is less than 82, right? At least for next year, Russell Wilson has to be on this team. You can make the argument he also needs to be there the next year, because also $57.5 million is still less than 82. Now this penalty will come down each year because the penalty is the portion of the contract that was a bonus spread out over these number of years. That's towards the salary cap. When the player signs a contract, they get their bonus that day. It's like literally a bonus check. But the way it works in the NFL, otherwise teams would just kind of hide all contracts in bonus and you would have no hit against the salary cap, the league still applies that bonus money towards the cap, but they spread it out over the length of the contract. And this is why teams do things like they'll negotiate with players even when they have 2 or 3 years left, because you can kind of like kick the can down the road, so to speak. Point being, Russell Wilson cannot be cut. It literally makes no sense. I know some people might say, well, you could take the penalty there, but how the real NFL works, and I think Madden even does this now, is that rollover is going to just continue to carry over. Like, you're going to have problems. And honestly, you're better just to keep him even as just a backup, or maybe a year where you can kind of, develop a younger quarterback or whatever. Try to use him. I mean, Denver is just in a mess with this. It's a similar thing with Stafford and the Rams. And so it's just a problem that I wanted to kind of explain, that it's just not so easy just to come in and like, cool, I'm going to cut Russell Wilson, let's rebuild. Yeah, you're going to impact your rebuild tremendously doing that. And it's another reason why I hope Madden continues to develop some of the player development elements where like Russell Wilson could maybe be a really good mentor to a young quarterback, or you could offer him things like a coaching position if he were to retire, or part ownership. I mean, whatever. You could get creative with these different things to do, but that would be kind of neat too. Last thing on the screen, the rookie reserve, that's just simply a portion of the salary cap that is being reserved for your draft picks based on the number of picks you have and also the quality of picks. In other words, like where are they at in round 1, where are they at in round 2? That's just kind of an estimate that the game makes you put aside so that you don't run out of money in free agency and then you go draft a bunch of players that you can't sign. Dalton Risner is really our best free agent here that we would re-sign. Pretty good guard. He's not a scheme fit, but he does have star dev even though he's 28. So it kind of breaks even there. And I don't mind having a power guy. Sometimes it's nice, especially at left guard, to kind of pull that guard and have him run to the right and things like that. And Dalton Risner, again, probably a guy, even though he's not an exact scheme fit. Is he worth like getting rid of to like create an extra hole? And I don't think so. So probably bringing him back, I think at $9 million over 2 years is fair. I don't think that's a bad deal at all. If I'm really tight on cap space, I'm probably singing a different tune. I'm probably going to pass because I need that $9 million, and I can probably find an interior lineman elsewhere for far cheaper. I think the key there is we're not making any like rush decisions. We're not cutting Russell Wilson. We're not re-signing everybody because we're trying to hoard bad players. I want to go into free agency in the draft with as much wiggle room and as much creative freedom to build this roster as I can. Just looking at the draft, I mentioned we should be picking in the top 5, but we're not. And so I believe we're actually towards the bottom. Yeah, we have the 30th pick. And so it's not something that I wanted to get too tied into and be like, oh, we can just leave this huge gap. We will fill it in the draft. We don't know what's going to go on. Number one, we have no idea if we'd be able to fill, even if we wanted to go the route of need, which I don't like to do in the draft. We don't know it would be there. And two, sometimes just really, really good players could fall. I mean, what if we have someone, Trenton Simpson falls to us, even though we don't need linebacker, or Anthony Richardson falls, or who knows, right? There's all these different things that would make us want to say, oh my gosh, like we don't need to worry about that. Let's just take best available player. And so Jordan Addison would be a really, really nice player from USC there. So we will let the draft come to us there, but just wanted to kind of mention that here too. Okay, so I went ahead and offered the kind of neutral offer on every single guy that we talked about, and 100% of the time they rejected it and said they wanted to test free agency. And so I intentionally did that for a couple reasons. I just wanted to see if anyone would accept it this late in free agency, and two, I'm just okay with that. I don't want to panic. Not a single one of these players is someone that I wanted to overpay for. And if they don't want fair market value, that's fine. I don't want to pay them more than that. We can always revisit this later on. It's the same reason why I'm not going to franchise tag any of these players as well. And what's a franchise tag? Basically kind of forces you to keep that player on a 1-year guaranteed deal for the average of the top 5 players at that position. So for instance, if we did it with our left guard, it would be a 1-year deal for $17.3 million. Now that might make sense if that's a Patrick Mahomes or something, which of course would be a lot higher because the average top 5 quarterbacks make more than the average top 5 left guards. But I don't want to pay him $17 million for 1 year when I almost signed him for 2 years for $18 million. It makes no sense. It's not a value, and I will not budge and become panicked and make a bad financial decision just to keep my left guard. We can always revisit it later. I keep saying that because it's very, very important. Draymond Jones, same thing. His franchise tag, 26.3. No way for 1 year when I almost got him for 2 years at 15. There's just absolutely no way. Singleton, we were kind of 50-50 on anyway. That'd be a 1-year deal at 17. We were going to get him for 11 over 3. No, right? So you're kind of seeing the pattern here. But all of these players, Fleming rejected it. And again, left tackle is going to be pretty expensive, $29.3 million. I mean, no way. So again, do not panic. The franchise tag is literally there to protect a franchise player. Those are rare. You don't have to use it every year. You don't have to use it in a panic move or anything like that. So just wanted to show that. But yeah, we didn't sign anybody here, and that's fine. And I didn't really mess with, you can of course go in and use custom offers and things like that. I'm sure there's some good sweet spots, but for this, I just wanted to kind of see how it went. But we're going in to free agency a little bit naked here, but that's okay. We'll revisit some of those offers later on. Well, we are in free agency now, but before we jump into the game plan that I came up with here for the Broncos, I wanted just to show you, I did go through and change my team schemes. I figured if I'm going to be the coach of this team, I'm going to put a little bit more of a staple on the team. And so we are going with vertical power run, 4-3 cover 3. It's not an exact fit, but we have so many free agents. If you're going to really change things over, this is the time to do it. I'm not a big believer in like forcing players into my system. Quite the opposite. I think you really need to come into a coaching situation like this and sort of force yourself to adjust to the players that you currently have. But again, there's a lot of holes in this team. There's players we're going to cut. I'm okay kind of making this change a little bit, even though we kind of went through the preliminary stages of the offseason with kind of the 3-4 and more of like a West Coast offense. But nonetheless, we did change it up. And so that, of course, adjusted kind of the approach that I'm taking to free agency. Now, in free agency, we get a basically 5 active negotiations. In other words, you can't just go through and make offers to like 100 people like you used to be able to. I like this change. I think it's cool in Madden 23. Evaluation periods, again, it's kind of a phase that you can kind of run through without advancing the week. This is probably set up more to kind of help with the kind of like poaching and things like this that were done in online leagues. I think it's a nice addition. It's still not done kind of the way I would do it, but it's an improvement. I'm glad it's getting some attention here. And so what have we done? And just kind of more importantly, I guess, what are we doing here in free agency? You can do a lot of things. If you have a lot of cap space, of course, you can go crazy and just spend. But you need to be careful. One piece of advice I can give you on that is just because you have that budget now doesn't mean you have to spend it all right now. It's not like it's a government program where if you don't spend it, they're going to take it back. It's a salary cap, right? So you can use that money, but if you don't use it, you will have it available in future seasons. If you force the issue and start offering, massive contracts to someone who, let's just say, Geno Smith or Garoppolo, 73 overall, well, now you're tied to this guy who's probably going to be like a 70 in a couple years, and you're paying him a bunch of money, and you're going to have to cut him, and you're going to lose all this money. So there is a bit of a balance. In my opinion, free agency is really advantageous for a couple things. If you're a good team and you're a piece or two away, go overspend, go get it, right? The idea is you're trying to win Super Bowls, so go for it. I think otherwise, if you're a team that's kind of rebuilding or maybe retooling, you can be a little bit more patient. Maybe you're looking for younger players. Maybe you're looking for dev tools or dev upgrade, or what am I saying? The dev badges there. But I also think that there's some value in finding kind of like role players. So again, like a power back to complement an elusive back. Maybe a third safety if you run a lot of like nickel big. Maybe you're looking for substitution level guys you can put in a dime package who are specializing in, say, zone coverage. There's a lot of different things that you can do. And you're going to find some value there by really kind of like, I guess, intentionally finding backups even that can work. I mean, even something simple like, hey, I have just run mauling right guard. He only comes in on the goal line. He's only in my goal line package, but hey, we got him for cheap. He's like a 67 overall, but this guy's a masher. And so you could do things like that too. So having said all that, here is kind of where we're going. Ben Powers, a guy we're going after. We actually want to go after him to be our our right tackle. So he's actually a guy that I kind of see better at right tackle. Another house rule that I do, you can see their top offers. We are tied with the Bengals. A couple things with offers. I have a couple house rules. I won't use anything other than these like default ones. So like high risk, medium risk, low, or very low. Beyond that, I will not allow my team, so if I go to like very low risk, I think it's going to bump me ahead and be the first place team. I won't allow myself to do that. And so instead, I'm going to go back to just low risk here, which is good for the player. And that's going to put us back in a tie. And so anyway, we've done that with Ben Powers. We've also done that with Dalton Risner. It's not likely he's going to sign here because he's not really thrilled with any of the offers. And it just kind of creates a little bit more drama for me. It creates a little bit of, it's not as easy to go in and like kind of build a dynasty, for instance. So anyway, we have offers on those two. Again, one of the guys is to play right tackle. Probably my top wish list item here is Bryce Huff. He's a guy that I would really like to come in and play. He really likes our offer. It's kind of down to us in Atlanta. I think as we kind of switch to this, he's a guy that we're overpaying a little bit for, but I'm still hoping that he's able to come in at age 25 and still develop. And again, if we're going to bring talent into this kind of bad Broncos team, we're going to have to overpay, and I don't mind overpaying in a position as important as a pass rushing end, which is what Bryce Huff's going to be for us. So we're looking at him. Defensive tackle, I really want to get just another body there, and so we're looking at Mata, I think is how you say his name. And again, no offers yet, so we're waiting on him. He did not make that top 5, but we are nonetheless interested in him. And let's see, we are actually going after Patrick Peterson as kind of a corner 3, probably going to substitute in on certain packages, so he'll certainly be in a rotation. Cornerback 3 is a starter for me. I run a lot of 4-2-5. I mix in a third safety a lot of times with like nickel big. And so Patrick Peterson's going to be a starter for us. Now, he's a contract that we've had to overpay. There's a lot of teams there. I'm not really expecting him to sign with us. I'm not really thrilled with the offer we had to give him. I think we had to go very high to even get on that list. And oh my gosh, I mean, we're going to get 1, maybe 2 years, and then we'd have to really eat some salary here. So we'll see. I'm not thrilled. It's nice that he's a mentor, but if he doesn't sign, I'm not going to lose any sleep. At free safety, getting a developmental player here, Terrell Burgess. I just like him. I think, again, I like to use 3 safeties. He's a perfect guy we could bring in, let him develop. And so I think he's going to be a nice fit for us. Originally, my top option was CJ Gardner-Johnson. I wanted to go after him. Great player. Would have been a really nice fit for us. But even at kind of the highest offer I could make, we're not even listed as being in the hunt. We weren't even close to being on that list. There's 20 teams interested. And so I didn't want to waste, sure, maybe it's a roll of the dice, but I didn't want to waste one of my 5 dice rolls on this guy. I'm perfectly content going with either Amos, Rapp, or Terrell Edmonds, or kind of the 3 other. Actually, I think it's just Edmonds and Amos I decided on. Looking at those guys as good fits as additional safeties. And then finally, eventually going to be signing a punter, but that's going to probably happen later on. Jamie Gillen is kind of the guy I'm looking at here. So yeah, let's dive in and see what happens. Okay, so we've gone ahead and advanced past the first evaluation phase. Well, overall, I don't think it's that bad. We did sign 2 players, and the 2 players that we did get are our future right tackle here. We did get Ben Powers, so really happy about that. Definitely one of our top targets, 81 overall, 27 years old. And we did get Bryce Huff, so really happy with those. We lost out on a bunch of other players that we had contracts to. The only one that didn't have an offer from us that we lost out on is Austin Hooper did sign with the Colts. So again, missed out there, but now we get to kind of jump in and we got 5 more to work with here, another evaluation period, but not too bad. Again, we lost out on Patrick Peterson. We lost out on, of course, Gardner, the safety we were looking at, but nonetheless, I'm pretty happy. I don't think it's any big shocks or anything that we saw in some of these deals that were rejected. They weren't huge losses because we would have just been overpaying anyway. And so again, someone like Risner and that sort of thing. So evaluation period number 2, it's very similar to number 1. Obviously, it's just a smaller pool, but the same kind of idea comes into play. And I'm going to actually retract one of the house rules I talked about earlier. I'm going to allow myself to go ahead and make offers to, at least in the second evaluation and the third one, if a player hadn't had an offer. And the reason I'm changing that is because the AI teams have that ability too. I mean, we saw it with Hopper and some others. Players are signing with just 1 offer, and that happens in real life too. So I'm going to kind of pull back a little bit on the strictness there. So we are offering to Zonovan Knight this time. We have still not done the tight ends just yet, but we are now also looking for a kind of a guard replacement with Will Hernandez. And the idea there is that will allow us to cut Glasgow who's a little bit pricey for his rating of 73. And so we'll actually save money by signing Hernandez and cutting Glasgow. So that's the idea there. And let's see who else. So that's 2 offers. We are going to get our defensive tackle, kind of he's older, but again, just kind of fills a role. So that's number 3. And then defensive backfield 2, where we lost out on Patrick Peterson, but we're now going to go after Mike Hughes, who I do like for a number of reasons here. And we can take a look and see precisely why, but really I like his 90 speed. He's very athletic, agility 93, acceleration 92. But really wanted the guy who I mentioned before can come in and play press. And so 85 press. His injury rating's a little bit lower, but again, we've lost out on our primary target, so we have to kind of make some concessions here. So 85, we're going to see. It's a 2-year deal. It's not super risky, and he's still at an age where this could really work out. He's 26, I believe. So he can develop, and he technically right now be our number 2 corner. So it's definitely something we could look to upgrade. What I like about most of these signings too is that we're not forcing ourselves into any particular draft pick, as I've mentioned before, but that works both ways. I'm not having to fill a hole, but I am also allowing our team to really draft anything we want. There's no one here that I'm signing that's like, oh, well, geez, too bad I signed that guy, because now what could we do? I mean, we could still sign a defensive or draft a defensive tackle. We could still draft defensive backfield. We could still even draft a safety. And so it all kind of fits in still, even offensive line. Most of the guys we have on the line are a little bit older, kind of approaching 30 or already 30 or higher. So anyway, the last then, I mentioned Amos the last time. We do have an offer there. Same thing. If there's teams in the hunt, I'm making sure I don't go above kind of that number of bars that like the Colts or Eagles have. And so, yeah, we have our 5. We're ready for evaluation period number 2. Let's see how it goes. Well, we lost out on Amos, so he is going to go to the Eagles there. Edmonds is our next target. We will eventually be making an offer to him. Our punter, I'm assuming, is still around. He is. No offers yet there, so we're good. Let's see if we got our halfback. And we did. So Zonovan Knight, pretty excited about that. I think he'll be filling a role. And this saves us a draft pick. Would you be excited if you drafted a 70 overall who's 22? Yeah, right? I mean, in the first round. Or, well, maybe not the first round, but certainly late first round and certainly beyond that. This is a free draft pick, basically. And for a team that's kind of short on draft picks right now, this is a nice signing for us. Very, very kind of under the radar signing. Let's see if our backup tight end is still around. And he is, so that's good news. Did we get Hernandez? We did not. So far, we're kind of missing out on everybody for this round. Let's see if we got our defensive tackle. He has not decided yet, but now the Steelers are in the mix. And again, I won't up that because I want to keep the bars even with the other teams interested. So we'll see if anything comes of that. Cornerback, let's see if we got Mike Hughes to sign. And we did. So we did get Mike Hughes. That's nice because that's definitely a hole. And that will help us out. So that's how the second evaluation period went. Let's go make 5 more offers, and then we'll be moving on again. All right, so here we are. The last evaluation period, pretty quick here. There's not a ton of players left that I'm really pursuing all that heavily here before the draft. But I wanted to mention, here we see Miles Sanders still at the top of the free agent list. And you may be wondering, like, well, why didn't we go after him? Why did we sign a 70 overall who's 22? Sanders isn't that much older. And he's making only about $5 million per year more than the guy we signed. But yeah, it's a fair question, and he's an elusive back. He would be a fit, but to me, it's like I just don't want to allocate that much money, $8 million just for the first year, by the way, into a contract that he's just going to be a part-time player for us. He's going to be in the mix. If we had no one else at running back, maybe there's an argument he'd be kind of the feature back. But as I've mentioned, I don't really use feature backs. I actually like to rotate 3 running backs. And so it's just not money that I wanted to spend. And even though it's only $5 million difference, that adds up. If you start overspending $5 million here, overspending $5 million there, it quickly adds up and you're out of space. So that was a calculated decision, literally, to bypass a player like Miles Sanders and instead go with our younger option here, who, by the way, is 22 years old and he'll be around a little bit longer. Versus a running back that is going to be 30 probably by the end of that contract he's going to sign. And although Madden is not an exact replication of real life, running backs typically on their second contract in the NFL do not fare very well. There are exceptions. You have your Adrian Petersons and so on, but those are exceptions to the rule, not the rule itself. And it's just something that you just don't want to get too caught up overspending on running backs, in my opinion, especially if they're going to be sort of platoon players. So anyway, for this evaluation period, who are we going after? Well, we're going after our tight end, who I've already shown you. We are going after another corner, and this time it's going to be the guy was kind of deciding between Mike Hughes and William Jackson the third. So I figured, hey, you know what? Let's just get them both. So we're going to try here. We're in the mix. There's 9 teams interested, so who knows? But he's in the mix there, and then we are going to go in and hopefully sign Terrell Edmonds. The offer is not great. It's just a 1-year deal. You know, maybe I could kick that up to a 2-year deal. Let's see, and 3.5. I really don't, because he's going to be a rotational player. I'm not in a rush. We can see. No one's really pursuing him. If we can sign him to 1 year, great. I don't mind doing that. And then we are actually signing our punter is the other one, hopefully, right? So we're going to be going after, the punter I showed you down here, Gillian. So anyway, punter, safety, corner, that's 3. And then the tight end. And, oh yeah, of course, it was the defensive tackle that we still have the offer out on. So he's our 5th. Let's see what happens. Okay, so we're into the last phase here. Third team in the mix now, Kansas City. So we'll see how that goes, but he is one of our negotiations that are ongoing. Let's check on the others. Again, we're going after another corner to give us some depth, and it looks like we lost out on William Jackson III. He signs with the Bears. Okay, bummer. Strong safety. Edmonds still considering our kind of crummy offer, but no one else has given him anything, so we'll see what happens there. Our punter has signed, so there we go. We do get Jamie Gillen and his mullet, so that is exciting. And let's see, what else do we have here targeted? That was everybody. Yeah, we got the tight end, still considering our offer here, Manhurts. So really at this point with this last phase, we're just kind of looking to see a couple options you can go. Do you just plug some additional holes, like fullback, for instance? I haven't even looked at that yet. There weren't any backup quarterbacks or anything, or even just players that are just kind of lingering around that are really good that maybe you didn't really expect to have a shot. You could roll the dice with. Another option is you could just kind of buy yourself an insurance policy here of like, if you're really worried about not getting this defensive tackle or something, go get another one. Of course, you run the risk of what if they both sign. You need to be comfortable with that and having to live with that, because there's no undo button with that sort of thing. So so far, what have we signed? Well, kind of spread out pretty nicely, guard, corner, and punter and running back. So yeah, and there's only one player who's over an 80. And I just like this. I like that we weren't super aggressive. We didn't overpay for anybody, at least not crazy. And we were plugging some holes, but we've left ourselves some flexibility for future signings, and certainly flexibility for the draft, because we could still draft really any of these positions, and it's not going to handcuff us or create any issues where we're having to skip over, say, the best available player. So I'm pretty happy with that so far. Just kind of show you the top players here who have signed elsewhere. But yeah, overall, it's been pretty fun so far. I'm going to go and get 2 more offers put together, and then we'll finish this phase up. So the last 2 targets we're going to come up with here is a fullback, Andy Janovich. Just need a fullback. I won't bore you with the details of why we picked him, but just kind of a body in that spot. But this last one is going to be kind of interesting. So Kyle Fuller, I've already signed a cornerback in Mike Hughes. We lost out on another one that we were going after. But let me kind of show you what I'm thinking here. So when I look at the actual roster here of the Broncos, we see a couple things here at our cornerback position. Now be careful, by the way, when you look at depth charts inside of free agency, like when you pull up a player card and you're making an offer, it'll show you like, hey, here's where he's going to rank on the depth charts. The game does not recognize injured players. So like, for instance, if I go to sign Fuller, they're going to say, oh yeah, you're far and away cornerback number 2, you're above Hughes, but it doesn't recognize Darby. So just something to keep an eye on. It's kind of a bad glitch that they need to fix, because it could impact kind of the wrong teams at the wrong time because of injuries. And so it's a way that if you have an injured player, you could actually sign someone at that position, because the player is kind of like blind to that injury, which again is kind of an oversight by the Madden dev team there. So anyway, I'm looking at Ronald Darby though, because he's very, very similar. He's actually a couple years younger than Fuller and the same rating. So why would I want to sign him to replace Ronald Darby? Well, this is why. $10 million in savings. By getting rid of Ronald Darby, cutting him, or even if we had to keep him, that's fine. But if we cut him, we save $10 million. We would apply $5 million of that towards Fuller, and then we would actually free up $5 million. So I guess the question is, you know, is a couple years of age worth $5 million? Probably not really, but because I'm not like really sold on Ronald Darby as a long-term solution anyway, not terribly concerned about it. You know, he's not like lights out in coverage. He's not a big press corner. He doesn't have like sort of blazing speed or anything, and he's hurt. But more importantly, he has a bit of a lower injury rating, and so to me, it just kind of made sense. Like, we can save some money here. I even looked at doing maybe a similar thing at receiver with Sterling Shepard, but it just didn't make sense because it wouldn't. Sterling Shepard's going to cost $10 million, and let's just say we wanted to cut Tim Patrick, who by the way is hurt, but he doesn't have a bad injury rating, just kind of a fluky injury. We would be essentially adding $5 million, or actually $15 million, right? Because we'd have a penalty of $6 million. He would be gone, and then we'd still add $10 million in the other receiver. So again, that doesn't make sense, whereas the cornerback position, it does make sense. And so we can roll the dice. It might not happen, and if it doesn't, great. We'll just go ahead and keep Darby on the roster. That's no big deal. We might keep Darby on the roster anyway. Darby would probably for sure get cut if we signed Fuller, and then we signed, say, like a rookie. We drafted a first, second, or third round corner or something like that. Who could come in, which, by the way, we don't have a second round. We have the 30th pick in the first. We have 2 thirds because of the terrible trade that the Broncos made for Russell Wilson. So that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, other than that, it's just the players we had before. This is kind of the last go here of free agency stage number 1. So let's see how it goes. Advance to the second stage of free agency, and you can see almost every single player that we still had out there is still just kind of floating the offers that round. Now, I could up the offer here. The Steelers have done so, and oof, I don't know if we're going to want to match this or not. Let's just go as high as we can, or at least I allow myself to go. Let's see if an impact is made here with that offer. I mean, yeah, that's, I don't know, and we're going to probably lose that defensive tackle, so that's not great. I probably need to up these offers, but really, I don't really care to. I don't really care if these guys sign, because I can easily just sign them in the kind of the preseason week 1 phase anyway. Anyway, we did sign Kyle Fuller, so that's going to give us some flexibility at corner if we need to go ahead and cut the other guy we were looking at there. But we don't have to right now, so there's no reason to. I'm not even sure if we'll really pursue much else. Now we get 10 active negotiations. So again, the free agency kind of opens up, and we can do a lot more here. So that's where we'll go next, and then get through these next couple phases, and then really start talking about the draft. We were just talking about cutting players to free up some cap space, and another reason that I like to sign Zonovan Knight is it's going to give us some flexibility to cut Chase Edmonds here, who to me is just a very similar player. They're both kind of be filling that role of the elusive back. You could make an argument that Chase Edmonds could stick around and be maybe our receiving back. But we do get a savings of 5.66. And so this is something maybe I'll do a little bit later. Let's just see how the draft goes. If we can get a receiving back, great. But he's making $6 million this year. He's the highest paid running back on our team. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. So, I mean, to me, it just makes sense to just cut this guy now. Can certainly find a receiving back later in free agency. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to give him his walking papers, as they say. And we are going to free up 5.66 in cap room. So, again, flexibility in signing some younger, cheaper players. It makes a lot of sense to do that. And we can do that in a couple other spots too. We can do that at left guard now because we do have Powers, who is technically going to be our right tackle, is kind of the thought. And actually, no, we're going to have to keep Glasgow because I forgot we didn't sign the other guard we were trying to get there. But so for now, keeping Glasgow, but he is certainly on the kind of maybe potential hit list. We would save $11 million, but right now he's going to be starting. So we got to kind of see, because as I mentioned, Powers will be moving to right tackle is the thought. And then the cornerback situation, again, I could either do it now or later. Now that we have Fuller in the mix with Hughes, it's nice to have 4 guys like this, sure. So again, I'm not in a huge rush to cut him now. We would save $10 million. The cap space says we have 36.2. I don't know if that's accurate or not, because when I go into the actual free agency menu, it's a little bit different. But nonetheless, it's hard to, I don't mean to be hyperbolic here, but it's hard to trust Madden sometimes with what we're actually seeing. Because when I go into here, It's saying the remaining cap is 6.48. You can see on the kind of the right middle of the screen there. So I don't know. We either have 36 or we have 6. I don't know. So nonetheless, it's not something we need to worry about just yet. We still have quite a few offers we could make, but understand you don't have to make these. So I will try to balance this, knowing that we still have free agency after the draft and plenty of opportunities to fill the rest of the team out. So we're going to speed up here kind of the rest of the offseason elements. Stage 2 and 3, again, not super significant, but I will call out a few things. One of which is really looking at special teams players. And that could be like backup linebackers even. I mean, guys who are like covering kicks, gunners, even though they're not really designated as gunners in the game, but typically like corners or receivers, guys who could run down and cover punts. But really what's probably a really important one is looking for players like a Jamal Agnew here or a Turpin, who could be a kick returner. And so it's something that's really easy to miss or forget about. Very similar in the draft too. I mean, sometimes you'll just completely forget to notice like, hey, a 6th or 7th round pick, instead of maybe just rolling the dice on a really low chance of getting a contributing player, you can find a really good special teams player. And so definitely something I hope Madden extends in the future is kind of like the actual like usefulness of a long snapper that, is good versus one who's bad, and even holders and things like that. But nonetheless, just kind of going through. I'm also looking at kind of just last second value here, last second deals. I think we do end up signing another right tackle. We are still looking at Sterling Shepard, but again, it just doesn't end up happening. It's just a little too expensive. We bring in Eric Rowe at strong safety. So we had a little bit of cap room to work with still. 1 year, really low risk deals made some sense. Let's just fill out the roster a little bit. It's not going to make or break us, certainly in the long run. So these are just some of the little elements that I'm doing here at the end of the free agent phase, just really trying to solidify a roster. I try to not go into the draft with holes. I don't want to go in there where like I'm just forced. I mentioned this earlier, but like I just don't want to pigeonhole myself into making a pick. I want to take best player available. And I can do this by even just signing guys who are like 76, 78 overall. That's fine. That's a serviceable starter. It can get you through the year, and it certainly avoid you having to pigeonhole a draft pick or anything like that. So again, we're just ripping through the offseason here, just getting through the kind of the last few phases. We eventually get into the 5th year options. I don't love how this seems very unfinished to me. You go through this little weird dialogue thing with your assistant GM, but unless you've looked at the player ahead of time, you have to make the decision without looking at him. So I accepted it because I couldn't remember. I'm like, I think Jerry Jeudy's pretty good in this game. But I kind of regret it because I'm paying him way too much money now for like an 83, and he's good, but it's just not the value that I wanted. And it's weird that you can't even look at that during those conversations when they could have just added a button to like pull up his player profile or at least shown you a screenshot or something. So again, something that seems a little bit rushed, incomplete, and Madden. Nonetheless, we did go through and sign him. So be careful of that. At this point, it's all about the draft at this point. It's really just trying to look and see when you go through things like, you're going to be selecting here your player scouting and your like personal workouts, I think they're called. And you don't want to, you want to think about where you're picking, or at least if you're making a trade or something like that. And I don't use trades, by the way, because unfortunately still Madden does not make draft day trades. They will trade draft picks, but not during the draft, which is like the most common time when draft picks are traded. So it's a little frustrating. So I just have a rule. I won't make any trade up or trade downs during the draft because the CPU teams don't get to either. But what I'm looking at here is I'm choosing my players for private workouts, and you want to be smart and pick players that might be available when you pick. It sounds obvious, but I'm picking 30th. There's no reason I'm scouting the top 5 players in the draft. It's just I'm not trading up. Trading up statistically is just it's a bad gamble. The only kind of proven thing in an NFL draft is the more lottery tickets you have, the more likely you are at winning something. And really any draft pick is a lottery ticket. Yes, some are worth more than others, but that's the general concept. Trading up typically, historically, statistically has been a bad gamble for teams. And so, you can just think about there's so many different examples where that's happening, Mitchell Trubisky, that sort of thing. So anyway, that's what we're doing here. The next video is going to be all about the draft. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe if you haven't, and check out the next one because it's time. It's time to jump into the draft. We are ready. Let's see if we can get this Broncos team back to respectability. And I appreciate you guys all checking it out. I'm Mike Lowe. This has been the offseason in Madden 23 with a late start Madden franchise. Talk to you guys next time.